guys have questions or get stuck on any. Um, so before we even open the game, I'm going to open up my GitHub app again. So we haven't really looked at this in a while since the first class. And remember, we use GitHub basically to download the game template that I created. And if you open it up again, you're going to see something like this where there's some changes made to the project. And that's one of the things that GitHub is good for, is keeping track of things that you've changed. And so if you're working on your own computer, it's good to kind of like keep track of the changes, but this is also much more helpful if you're working on different computers. So if you're using a lab computer and you want to work on it at home, the way that you can sync between multiple computers. So I'm going to show, actually, let me double check what's in my folder before yeah, I'm going to delete this. Okay, so one thing that I'm going to come back to this in a little bit, but one thing that you might want to look at, if you go to the repository menu and go to repository settings, there's this area called ignored files. And I put some defaults in here for you guys, things that we don't want to save, because there's certain things that you're going to build with the project that you don't really want to save on your GitHub. It's not the end of the world if you do by mistake, but it's just better not to save all these files. So there's a couple things in here that I don't think are in the original. So I'll add them again later. But so for example, in the project, there's an add-ons folder. You guys don't have this yet, most likely, unless you've done some add-ons on your own. But I have some add-ons that I added when I was testing some stuff out. And I don't want to push that to my main repo because I can always download the add-ons again. It's not my own code or assets. So to ignore that, what I do is I go to ignored files, and then I just add in, you can see there's all these different folders, and GitHub is just going to ignore either the files or the folders that I put here. So if I want to ignore all of my add-ons, I just click add-ons here and click save, and now they're all gone. I think this demo thing is also something that I was just testing out, so I'm going to add that as well. So after add-ons, I'm going to put demo and click save. And so I recommend doing this. If it doesn't work the first time you try it, let me know and we can take a look at it. But really, you should only have changes like, you can see I made some changes to the project.godot file, materials file, the levels file has some changes. So these are the kind of things that I want to save in the game. So once I've got everything that I want saved, I'm going to make a commit. So it's basically saying like take a snapshot of the way the game looks now. So I'm going to say updated levels. You have to put in a little message, and then you click this blue button, and it says commit. And so then to save it to the cloud, you just click this blue push origin button. Hopefully that'll work. If it doesn't, let me know. I can take a look at it. But then there's some useful buttons here. So if I go to show an explorer, that'll bring me to my game window here. And then if I click on view on GitHub, this will actually take me to my GitHub. And if you guys do this on your own version, it'll take you to your fork. So I can see there's, you guys have the forks here. So then you can sync it to your computer at home. So if you happen to work on this project on another computer, just open up GitHub, go through the same steps we went through on the first class, and then you'll be able to push the changes. And then if you make changes somewhere else, you'll just click this button, Fetch Origin, and that'll download the changes that you made at home or wherever else. So I'll come back to this in a minute, but that's just a little bit of a routine of using the GitHub app to sync our changes. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to make a build of our game. So I'm going to go to my game folder. Here's my game template, and I'm just going to open up project.godot. And so the nice thing about Godot is you can very easily build a project for multiple platforms. So you can make a game for Windows and Mac and Linux and the web and all that stuff using the same game files. So the way that I do that, there's one thing I have to make sure to add before I'm ready to export. So you may have already done this, but if you go to project settings and you go to run, you have to have a main scene here. That way the game knows where to start when you open the application. So if you go here and this is empty, you need to fill that in. If you try to build the game, it is going to give you like a warning. So even if you try to do it, it's gonna tell you have to do that. But to select this, you just click on the folder here and go to your scenes folder. And for now, you probably only have one level. If you have more than one level, that's fine. You can just choose. And just as long as there's something here, this will be fine. Before you export, you may want to look at your display settings. So I have mine set at full screen. So that's how the app will run when people download it. I'm going to leave it like that, but you could change it to, a specific width and height or make it resizable. There's some different options. So once you're ready, you've got everything ready to build and you want to share it with people, you can start by going to project, go to export. And right now I have all these presets, but they're not going to be there by default. So I'm just going to delete these. So you probably won't have any presets here. So I'm just going to delete these. And so when you first get here, there's a little warning here. We're going to ignore this for now. I'll explain them when we come up to them. So I'm going to click add, and then you can see the different platforms that you can export. So since I'm on a Windows machine, I'm going to start with Windows, but we can also do Mac. I'll probably just do those two. If you want to do Linux, I don't know if you guys if you have any Linux users, but that's another option. So I'm going to click Windows, and it's going to give me this little yellow warning, and it says the RC edit tool must be configured. This is to change the icon. There's a couple things that you have to do for that. I don't really want to deal with that, so I'm going to show you guys a different way to do that. So we're just going to ignore this yellow setting here. And so instead, what I need to do first is set where I want this to go. So I'm going to click a folder here. This is going to take me to my main game template folder. And I want to make a new folder here to hold my builds. If I have multiple builds, I want to make sure it's organized so my files aren't all together. And I also don't want to share my builds in the GitHub repo because the builds are easy to make. I can recreate them anytime. So I don't want to have to save them. That just takes up space, not necessary. I'm going to create a folder and I'm going to name it builds. And then since I'm doing multiple builds, I'm going to go ahead and create another one and call it Windows. And then I'm going to save. So that's going to be where this Windows build will export to. So then you can look at the settings. I'm not really too worried about here. One thing that you might want to change is the resources. So for the export mode, you can either select scenes and dependencies, or you can select specific resources. So if you've got a lot of stuff in your project that you're not actually using, this might be useful. But if your project is pretty small, I would just leave the default here. If you export your project and it's like 3 gigabytes or something like that, then you probably have resources you don't want to include. So then I would come back here and try export scenes. And then you can just choose the scenes you want, and then it'll look for the assets that are used in those scenes, and it'll export those all together. But for now, you should be fine with the export all resources. And you can filter out resources that you don't want to include. So, if I want to say don't include the builds, I could say that. Or I guess I would say that down here. So there's a few different settings that you might want to look at there. But again, unless your file size gets really crazy big, I wouldn't worry. Okay. So then I'm going to just click export project. Don't use the export pack/zip. This is to make a copy of the project so that other people can edit it, or you can save it and edit it somewhere else or send it to somebody. But this isn't an executable file, so other people won't be able to run it unless they already have Godot. We want a standalone file that people can run on their computer. I'm going to click export project. and I'll just give it a name here. I'll just call this mygame.exe. I'm going to click save. I'm going to ignore this. We're going to fix that in a second. So that's going to export. And so it doesn't look like anything happened. But if I click on my builds folder, still looks like nothing happened. Let's go to, I'm going to go to my file manager. Probably just doesn't show that. So here's my builds folder. And so there's my game. So for a Windows build, the game has two files. It has the executable file, and then it has this .pck file, which has all the assets. So you need those files to be together for the game to work. So the game is actually pretty large, 38 megabytes. That's pretty big, but it's not too crazy. I don't think I have anything too large, but anyway. So when I'm gonna upload this later, what I want to do is make a zip file to make sure that these two files stay together. So I'm going to right click on this Windows folder, and I'm going to click send to, and then compressed. I'm going to make a zip folder. And so this is now the file that I can use. This is a smaller version of the game that'll be easy to publish and share with people. So I'm going to make a Mac build, and then we'll look at publishing. Actually, before I do that, I forgot one step. So I'm going to delete this real quick. So one thing is that you probably noticed that it has the default Godot icon. This doesn't really matter, but if you want to change the icon, you can. And the way that you can do that, there's a bunch of different ways. I don't know why it's such a challenging thing, but if you go to the asset library and type in icon, you can use this add-on, Godot Icon Creator Replacer, to fix the icon. It's kind of annoying. It takes a couple steps, but if that's something you want to do, you can do it. So you can download this and install. And then what you have to do, there's a few steps. I have to go to project settings, go to plugins, and you have to enable it. Mine's already enabled because I've tested this before. But by default, it's not going to be enabled. So you have to turn that on first. Then you can leave project settings. Now, if you go back to project and go to tools, you'll see these two new things, icon creator and icon replacer. So it's a two-step process. So I have to create the icon. So I have a default icon image. You can make one if you want. You really don't have to, but I'm just going to choose my icon image. It made a few versions of it at different sizes. And then I have to save the icon. So I'm just going to click on this again. And I just need to give this a file name. I've already done this, so this is already sitting here. But all you would do is just type icon.ico. ICO is the file extension for icons, and click OK. I'm going to overwrite that, and then click OK. So now I'm going to apply the icon to the build that I just made. So I'm going to go back to Project Tools and go to Icon Replacer. It's kind of annoying, but whatever. I'm going to go to Choose Executable, go to Build, go to Windows, choose the exe, and click Open. And then I just have to choose the icon that I just made. And now I click OK. And now when I go back to this folder, you can see the icon's been implemented. Again, it's not necessary, but if you want to have a custom icon, that's the way that you do. Okay, so now let's go back. Let's zip this up again. So I'm going to go to send to compressed. And now we have windows.zip. So that's my first build. So people will be able to download that and play it. And you can test it if you want. So if I double click on this, it's just going to open up my scene in a game window. And so people can play it. And if I hit escape, it's going to leave. We don't have any like UI or menus or anything like that. So you want to make sure that you can exit out of the game using the escape key. That's built into the code, but just give that a test so you don't publish a game without that, without the ability to quit the game. Okay, so that's our Windows build. Let's go back and go to Project, go to Export again. Now we're going to do Mac. So I just click Add, choose Mac. Mac has this thing where it wants you to make an identifier. Mac obviously has all these rules that make it kind of hard to use software. but people will be able to use it. They just have to like right click on it and then say it's fine or whatever. So we're going to give this just a ridiculous identifier. Usually, it doesn't really matter what you put here, but they usually start with com. I'm going to put MEA 300 .game. It doesn't really matter what you put here. Then you can choose the icon. So I'm just going to choose my image icon. And then I'm just going to choose the export path. So I'm going to click on this folder again. Right now it's open to Windows, so I'm going to go back. I'm going to make a new folder and call this Mac. Although the Mac file is just one file, so you can get away with not having a folder for this, but I'm going to make it anyway. And I'm going to click Save. And then when I export the project, it wants a name, so I'm just going to game. Or I don't want zip on here. So I'll click Save. So now it's building. I have this really simple scene, so it's not going to take very long. So now I have a Mac build as well. So if I go in here, oh, it already made a zip file. So actually, maybe I don't really need Mac folder. Let's just name this game Mac. And then if I look in here, you're going to see 3D game template.app. It looks weird on Windows because Windows obviously doesn't play Mac executables or run Mac executables. But when somebody downloads it on a Mac, it'll look like a normal Mac project. Okay, so I've got my 2 zip files. I need to have zip files, compressed files to publish. So now we're ready to publish. So I'm going to leave Godot completely. And so now you have some different options here. I'm going to use a publishing platform called itch.io just because it's pretty simple. Basically, we have these files, but they're not particularly small. This one's 28 megabytes, this one's 15 megabytes. So it's not, I can't just like email it to people. It's too big for an email. And I could like, put it on a Google Drive and then send a link and do all this stuff. But then you have to replace it. There's all these annoying things. So what's easier to do is use itch.io, which is a service that's specifically designed for publishing indie games. You guys have probably seen it before. So what I'm going to do is go back to my browser and go to itch.io. And it really is very easy to set up. I'm already logged in. You'll have to create an account, or if you have an account, you'll just have to log in. But once you create an account on Itch, you can go to the dashboard and you can just create a new project. So here's some projects here. You can see I've done a lot of test projects. And then down at the bottom here, there's a button to create a new project. There's probably also one somewhere up here. I guess there isn't. Okay, anyway. So I'm just going to scroll down, create new project. I'll give this a title. I'm just going to say my game. And then for the project URL, it's just going to fill in whatever you put here. I wouldn't worry too much about this stuff right now because we're just using this for testing, but you can set some basic parameters like what type of game it is. We're going to do a downloadable. We're going to do no payments. We're going to do in development. And then here's where we upload our files. The nice thing about this is that I can give somebody a link to my itch page. And then if I want to change the build, I can just upload a new file, but the link will stay the same. So I don't have to send them a whole new. So I'll go to upload files and I'll find my project. Where is it? And I'll go to my builds folder. And I don't know if I can do both at the same time. Let's see. I already have a game called My Game. So let's call it My Game Ring 3. Or I'll call it my. Okay, let's try it again. I'm going to upload these two. And so it's uploading at the same time. It goes pretty fast because they're pretty small. And then I just have to choose the executable. So game mac.zip is obviously the Mac, and it's an executable. And then Windows, just choose Windows. And that's pretty much it. So, if I change the game and I want to update it, I can just delete this. and then upload a new one. You can write a description if you want. Here's the first build of my or MEA 100. You can choose a genre if you want to, whatever. You can add tags if you want to. We don't really need to do this stuff because we're not at the point of advertising this. You can turn the, if you want to turn off comments, that's fine. Or we could have comments or discussion. And then down here, visibility and access. So it's easy if you do public. If you don't want to have something out publicly, you can do restricted, and then you'll have to give access to other users in the class. But it's obviously a little bit easier if you do public. But notice that public is disabled, so you have to at least view the page once to make sure it works before you can publish. So let's click Save and View Page. And so here we go. It's really, there's almost nothing on here. If you want to put an image on here or whatever, you're welcome to update this page as you develop the game. You can change the colors. You can do all this stuff. But for now, we just want a way to share the game. So people can download the Mac or the Windows. You can see some info there. If I click on the download, it's just going to download it, and then I can open it up and play it. So basically done, but it's not actually published yet. It's still just a preview. So make sure you have to go back to Edit Game, and then go down here again. Now we can click Public. So we're going to click Public and click Save. You have to make sure to do that, or it won't be available. So there we go. So now you have a link. You can share this. Like I can go onto Discord. And I can go to MEA 300. I can say, check out my game. And now people can go download it. They can play it. They can put comments on it. And so that's how we're going to do testing. You guys can download each other's games and then run them and try them out and give each other feedback. And as I mentioned, when you change the game or want to update it, you just have to go back to that page, but the URL will stay the same. So you don't have to worry about updating the way that you're sharing it. So that's pretty much it. That's how we're going to do that. So one last bit, I want to go back to GitHub. So notice that all these builds are here now. As I mentioned, I don't want to save those in GitHub because I can always generate a new build, and they take up a lot of space. So I want to go back to repository, go to repository settings, go to ignored files, and then I'll just add a new folder, builds, and click save. And so now you can see the git ignore has changed because I add builds, but nothing else changed. So I'm going to say update git ignore main and push origin. And now I'm good to go. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So I'll stop the recording here, and then let me know if you guys have questions.